Hi folks, Alan Saunders here for Pittsburgh Sports Live at PPG Paints Arena, joined by Zachary, Weiss, where Duquesne and Penn State just played a wild one. The Nittany Lions end up winning by 6 points, even though the game was tied with 5.4 seconds left. And if you think that's improbable, the way it actually played out, even more ridiculous, as Duquesne head coach Keith Dambrot called for 2 technical fouls to give Penn State free throws and basically the means to win the game after what was a close but not particularly controversial foul call on Penn State's final possession. Zach, just how can you describe the way that game ended and what just happened here?
I think Scott Van Pelt just got his SportsCenter segment for the night for starters, but the only debate about the foul was the timing, the 5-second matter. Do you call it? Do you swallow your whistle? The official was not afraid to call it, and Keith Dambrot after the game was remorseful to his team about being called for it. That being said, he doesn't regret standing up for them, and it's hard to blame him for that. I think his vertical ended up being as big as the deficit with his reaction, which was 3 jumps, loud stomps. It sounded like he was in a WWE ring, and then the technical, which he first claimed that he did not get a warning for, which seems uncharacteristic for an official to do, which might have led. Would it have made a difference? It's hard to say because of the heat of the moment. But 6 Penn State free throws at the end of the game make up the final deficit. You don't want to see a game that had so many peaks and valleys for both teams end that way, and it's unfortunate. And Dambrot got out 5.2 seconds early. But that being said, Duquesne did do a lot of things right, but it's going to be this mistake, this last step, that might be looked upon at the end of this one for quite a while.
Yeah, I think, to kind of start the play, it was a great play by Stevens from Penn State to draw the foul. He drove right past Marcus Weathers on the wing, and Mike Hughes steps up. I thought it was clearly a block. Keith Dambrot obviously, he said it was not just about that call, that he felt like there were 2 or 3 down the stretch that the Dukes didn't get. But I didn't think his reaction warranted a technical foul at all. I didn't even think it was particularly close. And then after he got the first one, he lost his mind and needed restrained by his assistants and some of his players. Quite the visual. If you haven't seen it, go to Pittsburgh Sports now. Look for David Haig's pictures of the game. Quite entertaining to see Keith Dambrot lose his mind like that, but as you said, it ends up costing his team. At least in theory, Penn State would have had the 2 free throws anyway, just about 5 seconds left. A bad situation for the Dukes, certainly one that could have been overcome, but I think you really hit the nail on the head that this really overshadows a strong performance by Duquesne. I mean, they came back twice, once at the end of the first half, once in the middle of the second half, against a Penn State team that's beaten Virginia Tech, and yeah, they've played down to some opponents, but they have the talent to be an upper middle Big Ten team, I think, if they could get some consistency. And one of the things I thought Duquesne did really well was they kept them on their heels by pressing, by changing the press, and I thought that was really important as to how the Dukes got back into the game, especially in the first half. I think they were trailing by 6 or 8, was it?
Thereabouts.
Yeah, towards the end of the first half, and they came back to draw things close and then take a lead. I thought that was really important to just their psyche as they play another one of these games where things kind of got out of hand, but they kept fighting back in this one.
And the other thing that I liked is even when they had their lull and even when it felt like Sin Carey was kind of taking the team on his back on both ends of the floor, the one thing that was really encouraging was that they still got to the free throw line, and they got to the free throw line at a very, very good rate. They only missed 3 free throw shots the entire game and 1 in the second half, and they went to the line 21 free throw shots and they made 20 of them. I mean, you can't really ask for more as a Duquesne coach. I mean, yes, the shots didn't fall, but they still found ways to score. As far as the end of the game goes, I think everybody knew who was getting the ball, and maybe Mike Hughes with that knee contusion, maybe that bites him in the butt a little bit at the end. He did play 15 minutes, which is a big ask for a first game. But like you said, there's a lot to like. Eric Williams, his first start, he did very well. I mean, yes, he kind of was a little silent until that 3 in the second half, but the press, I think, really was a key to this game. And what I mean by that was you could see that there was a physicality difference between these 2 teams, and I think Duquesne understood that Penn State had that advantage. So they took as much of the advantage away as they could in that first half, and you really saw that pay dividends. Yes, Penn State kind of had a counter to that diamond press in the second, especially on the second pass, that outlet out after the initial pass where Stevens was running or someone else was running, and it set up the offense. But Duquesne still pressed until they kind of realized they were losing some energy and losing some juice, and that's when they kind of became more concentrated and decisive with the ball on the offensive end and kind of laid back defensively. The end of the game was what it was, but I mean, I don't think, again, 2 assists on 4 makes, 9 turnovers in the second half, that 7 minutes or whatever that was without a field goal. Those are big misses, in my opinion, more so than Dambrot. Everybody on Twitter, everybody on social media will say what Keith Dambrot did cost Duquesne the game. I think there was so much that went right, but some of those misses I just referenced really come back at the end of the game and really spell the end result for this one.
Yeah, I think, though, to me, the takeaways almost have to be positive because, I mean, this is a game where Duquesne was, I think, a 5.5-point underdog, and, probably ought to have covered that, although, like we said, bad beat Central with the way the game ended. But I thought Williams was engaged defensively. He grabbed, I think he was the Duquesne's leading rebounder, in addition to Duquesne's leading scorer. When he's playing, I think Keith said this week, when he wants to be our best player, he's our best player. And tonight he wanted to be Duquesne's best player. I thought he was for most of the game. There were some stretches where he struggled a bit, but man, he's such a difference maker, and I think the press makes so much sense for this team. I mean, Dambrot is trying to figure out how to work all these guards between Carey and Tavian Dunn-Martin and Mike Lewis and Williams, and they have so many options. Lamar Norman, Wade, I don't even think he played.
He did not play.
He's got so many options that it makes sense to be able to roll through that energy and roll guards out there and press teams. I think it makes a lot of sense. So I think that's something we'll see more of. And I think if we see more of the Eric Williams we saw tonight, very good things in the future for Duquesne. Pat Chambers said some great things. He said, this is a good team, look out, A-10. I think they're going to be a problem. And this is not the first time that Mike Hughes has impressed someone at this stage as well. And I think it's pretty clear that he is a special player at the A-10 level. Again, was a big impact on the game tonight, even only playing 14 or 15 minutes, even with a bulky knee. He's a difference maker. And I think if they get Williams going and they have Hughes playing the way he is, even with just those 2 guys, they can make a decent run in the A-10.
I think addressing all of those points, first, Eric Williams is a starter on this team, period. What he did before, whatever discipline that was, it's been corrected, and it's clear that message is simple. But you can just tell on the floor how much starting means to Eric Williams Jr. When he was on the bench, you saw a little bit of hesitation coming in. You saw maybe a little tentative flow. Today, you saw he did not hesitate in any way on the 3, especially I remember a sequence in the second half, kind of wing to wing. Sin Carey makes this great outlet pass, and he finds right in the breadbasket Williams, who doesn't hesitate. Perfect 3. Williams Jr.'s defensive intensity, like you said, was there. For really, as you said, for points for Mike Hughes tonight, not necessarily there, except for the foul shots. 8, I think he got 8 of his 10 from the line. But that all being said, what he did bring was that right around mid-level of that first half, he had that energy play where we talk about Keith Dambrot standing up for his team. He didn't like what was said on the floor heading into a media timeout, so he stood up, and he almost got teed up for that too. But it sent a message to Penn State, maybe more importantly, it sent a message to Duquesne that they're a serious contender. As far as pressing goes, I think it's a good idea, but only as long as you have juice within your team. And this is an issue Dambrot's had. He cited that this team has depth, but he cites that in spurts this team loses its juice, and at times it might be due to overexcited youth. It might be on this spread. Whatever the case is, they're going to have to find a selective way, because even when Penn State tore the diamond apart, it seemed like there was a little bit less defense. They still didn't get back, and they were missing key rebounds in the second half, but you can't get everything. You're going to have to find some kind of solution. Whatever it is, it's going to have to keep the guys happy. And it seems like the press kept them engaged defensively too, so that's encouraging.
I'll wrap things up here from PPG Paints Arena. I'm Alan Saunders. I've got Pitt tomorrow night at the Peterson Event Center. Zach will be back Saturday. Dukes have Eastern Kentucky at the Palumbo Center. Until then, thanks for watching Pittsburgh Sports Live.